Hello and welcome back to Forging the Tip of the Spear. I'm your host, Mike. The holidays are upon us, and I think the last thing that anybody really wants to do is backtrack. I know for me, the last thing that I want to do is backtrack. As it is, I've already been sidelined for a week, haven't been able to work out or really do a lot of the things that I would normally do. And now, with the next week or so ahead of us with Christmas Eve and then followed by New Year's Eve, I don't want to lose any of the momentum that I made this year, and I don't want to feel like I'm starting off 2023 backwards. I'm sure anybody that's listening doesn't want to also. More like than not, if you're listening to this, you want to try and become the best version of yourself so that you really can help not only yourself, but your family and maybe even society move forward, especially in a time when I think we really need it. And what I want to talk to you today about is some of the things that I'm going to do in order to make sure that at least as 2023 approaches us, I'm still moving forward. And it doesn't matter how much you're moving forward, as long as you're moving forward. One of the things that I said to a good friend of mine the other day is it doesn't matter how fast your progress is, but if you're making progress, that's all that really matters. Everyone wants to, be 100 miles ahead of where they are right now. But that's not really the question. Are you ahead of where you were yesterday? If the answer is yes, then you're doing the right things. And you just need to keep doing them long enough to really cover that distance that will get you to where you want to be. But before I get into any of that, let's talk about some of the things that I think could be really helpful if you're, going to be celebrating Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, with friends and family, and you might be a little bit stressed out or concerned about losing some of the progress that you're making, whether either physically, mentally, or emotionally. And I'll deal with each one individually. First of all, with the physically. Christmas Eve, Christmas Day specifically, and I'm talking to that because that's the perspective that I have, can be a day where there's a lot of food that, we'll say is less than the healthiest. I'm not a nutritionist, I'm not a dietitian, I'm just talking about from my own perspective and the way that I look at it. I'm Italian, so usually for Christmas Eve it's a lot of seafood, generally fried seafood. And while it's delicious, we need to also keep in mind that sometimes too much of that can also not necessarily be the best thing for us and can sideline some of the progress that we're making. So for me, one of the things that I'm going to do this year, in opposed to say years in the past where I kind of let myself go and just felt kind of gross by the end of it, and that's the last thing anybody really wants during the holiday, is I'm actually going to try and do two things before I even get to Christmas Eve dinner. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to try and make sure that I get out and I do some form of exercise. I'm still sidelined from my procedure for another few more days, so tomorrow I'm going to go for an hour walk. I know it's going to be very cold here. I'm in New York. I think the temperature right now is about 16 degrees with a wind chill that probably puts it somewhere in the single digits. It's very, very cold out. But I'm going to bundle myself up, put on a podcast, and go for about an hour walk just to make sure that I'm getting my body moving. The other thing that I'm going to do is before I even leave my house, I'm actually going to eat a little something. Probably something high in protein, or something that is high in protein and also maybe a very good carbohydrate. So what I might have is perhaps 4 eggs, followed by maybe some steel-cut oatmeal. Or I might have a couple of eggs with either some pineapple or some sort of a fruit. I usually like to do those things. That way I already know I'm not walking into Christmas Eve dinner starving, looking for any piece of food that I can find just so that I can be like, oh, I gotta eat. That way, when I actually do see food, I can make that decision whether it's something I really want to have or something I'm just having because I'm hungry. And that's a big difference maker. You have to be able to differentiate the difference between, is that something I really want to have, something that's really going to give me enjoyment, which then have it, absolutely, or is it something I'm just going to eat mindlessly because I'm so hungry I can't think of anything else. You have to be able to tell the difference. And when you can do that, it makes a big difference. Now, when it comes to mentally, I think that that is one of the most underrated things that we don't really talk about in society lately is the mental aspects of the holiday season. For most people, it's wonderful. I enjoy the holiday season. I truly do. I'm very fortunate. I have two young boys. They're very excited for Christmas, and it's going to be great. But I do acknowledge that a lot of people also suffer during this time. They have a lot of anxiety or difficulty, or they're nervous about seeing family, or maybe gift giving and things like that. And the way that I look at it, or the way that I try to view it, is if you're trying to do the right thing, trying to do something nice for someone else, for no other reason other than you just want to do something nice, you're more likely than not probably doing the right thing. And I know that that's not perfect advice, and I'm not saying it is, but I think that sometimes we get so wrapped up in the materialism of it all that we don't really think about just the gesture or the action. Stoic philosophers have talked about the action. I believe it was Marcus Aurelius who talked about when you do something, you should do it because it's right, because it would benefit others, and that's the only reason you need. A lot of people are looking for the third part of that equation, which is the recognition for it. But do you really need the recognition? The answer should be no. If what you're doing is right, and you know that it made a difference for someone else or society at large, that should be enough. You shouldn't need the recognition, because that is not in your control. It's within your control to do the action itself and to do something that would benefit someone else also. The way I would, use this in today's terms is, if you have a loved one, a family member, whomever, and you kind of thinking, should I get them something? Should I not get them something? Get them something. Just get them a little something. It doesn't matter. It's the gesture. If it's something you think they're going to enjoy, for instance, maybe they really love socks, and you see a crazy pair of socks, and you're not quite sure. Grab them the pair of socks and go, listen, Merry Christmas or Happy Holidays to you. I saw these, I thought of you. I just wanted to do something nice for you. That's it. You don't even need them to acknowledge it. It's not that's not important. What's important is just doing the thing itself, because you're going to feel that you did it. The recognition should not be the reason why you do something. It should be because it makes you feel better, because you know it's the right thing to do. And I think when more people focus on that than the other things, the materialism, how much is this gift, or how much, none of that matters. It really doesn't. What matters is just trying to do the right thing. Lastly, what I do want to talk about is, I know sometimes around this time, I know a lot of people have talked about it on YouTube with regard to Thanksgiving, politics, religion, they may come into play, especially Christmas is a religious holiday, and you might be at the dinner table with people of diverse views from yours, people who may not agree with you or your lifestyle or whatever. And what I would say to that is, you cannot allow yourself to be so consumed by other people's views or opinions that you will let it affect you, because then you become complacent in it. What I would say to you is, if it's something where you want to have an actual open and honest dialogue, that's one thing. But if it's going to be a fight, don't even engage. There's no reason to. You don't need to lie with pigs in the mud because somebody decides that they have to have the last word. Let them have the last word. Is it that important to you? You're not going to change their mind. They're not going to change your mind. So you don't necessarily need to engage. You don't have to have an opinion about everything. You can choose instead to maybe ask a conversation. Isn't the weather crazy? You could use that. Oh, how's work going? Or, what's new in your life? There's a lot of different topics that you can talk about at the dinner table or with loved ones, friends, family, that don't necessarily have to devolve into shouting or one-upsmanship or who got who. I just think that's silly. This time of year, I think it's important to remember, do the things that are going to be best for you so that you can move yourself forward. I think more oftentimes than not, we have a tendency to let ourselves kind of say, I'm going to coast at this time, I'm just going to let myself go, and the problem is one day turns into 2, turns into 3, turns into 5, turns into a week, And before you know it, you're already rolling into 2023, and you're on, you're going backwards instead of forwards, and you're already feeling like you're flat-footed and you're not really hitting the ground running. And that's the last thing that we want to do. The whole point of this podcast, and the reason why I've been doing these videos, is because I think there's a lot of people who want to keep trying moving forward with their lives. However small the progress might be, the point is you do want to move forward. And I think that these are some of the things that I'm going to do to make sure that as I approach the new year, I'm moving as quickly as I can and in the right direction. And I think you can too. And I think that's how you really forge yourself into the best person possible for yourself, your family, and society. Thanks for joining. Have a great holiday season.